Assalamu alaikum ji. I welcome you all to this content or the subject that is on software engineering. So I will start my lecture on the software that is software requirement engineering. We will discuss the different aspects of understanding what is software requirement and how it helps to you to create a particular software in a professional way or a professional manner. So we will start on understanding what is software requirement or what are the software requirements and how they are, how much they are helpful in creating a particular software, and what is the importance of software requirement in development of the software, and why we have opted or why have we have selected to as a separate subject, that is understanding requirements of the software. So we will go towards the basic definition of the requirement and what is requirement engineering. So we will understand the both perspectives, that what is a requirement. You already know we have discussed in software engineering one about requirements, that what are the requirements. So we have learned about requirements, that they are the system services or the constraints applied on the system services. They normally we call this as a requirement. In a broader spectrum, we call this as requirement of the software, that whatever the services are being provided by the system. Whereas the requirement engineering is a process or a mathematic or a procedural approach or a sequential approach in which we decide what is to be done. An engineering method in which we realize that what sort of problem we are going to solve. In extracting requirements or in software engineering one, we were not discussing how requirements are coming out of the customer, or how are the requirements coming out of the customer. We have discussed only that what are the requirements and what, not more than the possibility of the source of the requirement. Normally that is coming out of the customer. So we said that these are the services which are required by the customer and which are needed to be incorporated in the software. But whereas when we talk about requirement engineering, so we say this is a process in which what is to be done, what is to be done. This question, whatever we are asking, that the question we are asking is what is to be done is asked actually, and that is elicited first. Elicited, you already know about what is elicitation. Elicitation is extracting the important things about about requirement. For we are talking about requirements, so we will say extracting important things about requirements and leaving out the unwanted things about the software. We will say this is the process or this procedure is called as elicitation of the requirement. So what is to be done is elicited, important things are noted down. This process is called elicitation, or this is elicited, then modeled and communicated. Modeled right now here is design, and then communicated. This is the Freeman definition of the requirement engineering. Well, as Somerville defines it like the descriptions of the services. What services are required? What services are required? These are the descriptions of the services, and the constraints are the requirements for the system. What constraints are being applied on you while developing that particular software? Normally we say, if I want to create a software in which there will be arithmetic operation of whole number, this whole number starting from 0 to 9, if any number comes in between, like for example 99 is a whole number, 1 is a whole number, 0 is a whole number. Now, if I want to create a software which accepts whole number, so this whole number is a constraint applied to me. While I am providing a service, that service is to create an arithmetic calculator for whole numbers. So the creation of the arithmetic calculator that will be performing addition, subtraction, and multiplication, this will be the services, and the constraint will be created for a whole number. So that will be constraint. And if you are doing this, you are describing, you are giving details about this, then you will say this is the definition given by the Somerville, that is the descriptions of the services and constraints are the requirements for the system, and this process is known as requirement engineering. Another definition of given by the Somerville is the process of finding out, analyzing, then documenting and checking these services and the constraints is called as requirement engineering. When you only talk about requirements, you only talk about services. That services, whatever the services are defined for a system, they are called as a requirement of the system. Yes, this is correct definition. But figuring out, finding out the procedure, the process, the way to find it out, the way to engineer it out, then you analyze it whether they are appropriate requirement or not, then you document it, like for example you create an SRS document for it, and then you check it for validity of the requirements, whether these requirements are appropriate, they are correct, they are complete. We have discussed in software engineering one, requirement are easy to understand, requirement are complete, they are giving a particular meaning, a proper meaning, then we will say they are complete. This all are what they are checking these services and then checking the and constraints. So collectively we will call it, this the process is called as requirement engineering. So this is an introduction about requirements, and this is introduction about what is a requirement or what is requirement engineering. So simply if we say about requirements, so these are the services or constraints provided by the system, while as requirement engineering is a process in which we figure out what services will be given by the system or what services will should be given by the systems, and what are the services, how they came to existence in the form of the requirements, how they are analyzed, how they are validated, and they are checked, and they are validated, and then constraints are figured out. This complete process or procedure is called as requirement engineering. So there is a basic difference between requirement and requirement engineering. So there are, and in the next slide there are some requirement engineering frequently asked questions, and the first question is, what happens when the requirements are wrong? So we all know if requirements goes wrong, so normally the system will be created that will be in a delayed process. So systems are late, and there is a maximum probability that when requirements goes wrong, the system will be unreliable and it may not be in meeting the customer needs. It will not be according to the needs of the customer. Then another question is there an ideal requirement engineering process? The answer is simply no. In software engineering, you cannot say this is an ideal process of extracting requirements. It totally depends on the ergonomics, the humans, the people living in a particular region. So we ergonomic study come into existence, and ergonomic study says that this is the behavior or the interaction level of the people. So it depends, it varies from country to country, from region to region. So the ergonomics play important role in this phase, in this process. So we say when we are gathering information, being a software engineering, if I visit somebody, so I will have a different approach based on my personality. Somebody else goes to the customer, he will ask questions and he will ask in his own way. But both the people who are going for the extraction of the requirement has the ultimate goal to extract requirements from the customer. My way will be different from the other person who is visiting the customer. So definitely there is no defined procedure to extract requirements. Processes must be tailored to organizational need. This is important thing, that whatever you do, you have to communicate each and everything. You have to extract each and everything in the form of requirements so that organizational needs are fulfilled. Then the another question about another question in the frequently asked questions about software requirement engineering. What is a requirement document? So that is a formal statement of system requirement, normally in the form of software requirement specification. or simply we can say a vision document or an SRS document. So yes, there is a document, and that document is a formal statement of the requirements present in a document form. What are the system stakeholder? Anyone who is affected in some way by the system. So we will say that is a stakeholder. That can be a user, that can be a customer, that can be the in between user and customer, that can be an organization manager, or that can be anybody who is affected from the software. So that person we will call it as a stakeholder who has direct influence on the software. The person who has direct influence on the software or who is directly affected from the software, so we will call that person as a stakeholder. There are some more frequently asked questions about software requirement engineering. What is the relationship between requirements and design? So as you have studied in software one, that they are very much closely related with each other. Normally we say they are interleaved with each other. So requirement and design are interleaved with each other. They are directly connected with each other. The sort of requirement is will define a particular sort of design for that particular system. They should ideally be separate processes, but in practice, this is impossible. Normally, requirements will define a particular design for you. So, in theoretically, we say that requirement and design are two separate things, but practically, we cannot separate them in terms of two different phases of software development. So, we will call it as that they are interleaved, and practically, they are not separate things. They are the same, they lie in the same process. So we will say design and requirements are interleaved with each other, so they go side by side. Another frequently asked question is what is requirement management? So my requirement management is managing the requirements, yeah, managing the changes occurring to the requirements. Whenever we create a software, we deal with the requirements. They will eventually become the services of the system. Now, if there is some particular change, some customer wants to change the requirement during the execution, during the creation of the software. So handling that change, whether it can be accommodated in the software or it cannot be accommodated in the software, that change, managing that change in the requirement, that process is called as requirement management. Then we will talk about what is a process. So we have learned about process, that is an organized set of activities that is carried out to transform inputs into outputs. Input is your requirement and output is your developed software. Input is requirement. For example, if you take the waterfall model, so there are different process activities involved in waterfall model. That is requirement gathering, then system design, then implementation and coding, and then there is a testing phase. So there are different process activity set of activities, and starting from the input is your requirement, and going towards the output, that is your usable software. So this whole procedure is called as process. Example of process description is your instruction manual for example, you purchase a dishwasher and you don't know how to use it. So there will be a manual instruction manual provided to you. For example, cookery book, there is a cookery book in which allows you to cook different sort of dishes. So that dishes will, that cookery book will allow you from the manual that how to execute a particular dish item. And then after process is set of activity, and process model is the organization of the set of activities shown to you in a particular perspective. So we will call this as a process model. We have already discussed these things in software engineering. What about process? About process model, that is software process model, the different organization, the different layout of the processes. Processes actually are the set of activities. They are presented in different perspective. So we will call it as a software process model. So these are few frequently asked questions about software engineering. Then we will go towards a very famous requirement engineering, requirement story. This is a very famous story about requirements. If they go wrong, so what will be the result of the eventually developed software? If you look at the diagram, in this picture, so you will see that how the customer explained the requirement. He wanted to have a swing, and in that swing, uh, there will be something on which a person can sit and he can sling around or swing around, and that rope is tied to a tree. This is what is explained by the customer. Now, how the project leader understood, and he told you, the customer told you that it should be on a single branch and it should have a rope and there should be a sitting place and person can swing around using this whatever is tied to the tree. But the project leader understood this thing, that there will be two ropes and one rope will be on the one branch and the other rope will be on the other branch, and there will be something like this, and the person will be sitting on this and he will be slinging. So this is not possible to sling because there is a base of the tree. So how analysts design it, the analyst designed it, okay, there is a problem in executing this because this will be obstructed by the base of the tree. So he cut the base of the tree into pieces, and then he said, okay, this will be the, this is actually the design, this is how the project leader defined it, this is how the analyst discussed it, and this is how the programmer wrote the code of that particular problem. And this is how the business consultant defined it, the person who is selling your software. He told you that there will be something like a sofa seat and you will be sitting it and you will be floating or swinging in the heavens like that. And the how the project was documented, a poor documentation is present here. There is nothing to show you, there is no manual given to you, there is nothing defined. So there is an empty picture here. What operations are installed? This, there is one operation, and that is only a rope which can swing around, the rope which can swing around. How the customer was built, customer was built like we are creating something up, a bridge like this one. Actually he wanted something else. And how it was supported on this. And how actually what the customer wanted was something like this. Customer wanted to create a swing in which there is a tire which is tied to a rope and to a single branch of the tree. This is actually was demanded by the customer, and this was actually perceived or explained by the customer. So customer poorly explained it, the project poor leader poorly understood it, the analyst poorly designed it, the programmer poorly coded it, because everything was in poor form. We have in the previous slide, we have discussed what will happen if requirements go wrong. So the software will not be created. The software will not be created, or software will not be fulfilling the needs of the customer. Customer wanted this thing. You have created this thing to the customer. This is not according to the requirements of the customer. The reason is software requirements are wrong. So this is the famous requirement story. If on contrary, if requirements were understood correctly, the software will be something like this, which was actually wanted by the customer. Okay, so we have covered a few slides in this introductory lecture. So in the next class, we will discuss about system engineering and different classes of the customs systems and other things. So if you got any questions about the lecture, so do post it in your WhatsApp group. I will be there to answer you and see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.